He is a college professor, author, martial artist with an MA in English and a professor of rhetoric. Please welcome back to the show, the Taoist professor himself, John KLYCZEK.
Hey, thanks for having me
There
back,
he is.
Matt.
Hey, good to see you, man. Good to have you back.
Yeah.
And thanks for reaching out about this. I've looked into some of the work you've been doing on this, and we've had a conversation on this in the past on the show. What's happening with the Department of Education? We have Trump going after them. I saw this on your feed today. So let me bring this up, and I want to pass to you. And you tell me because you tweeted this out because this seems like it's kind of inaccurate. It says here the Trump administration is drafting an order to start closing the Department of Education. So he's putting this executive order together, which will kick off the process of eliminating the Department of Education altogether. Which obviously will align, that adage lines up with all the other things he's been doing with Doge and getting rid of this, getting rid of that, all the cancellations of this and this and that. And then this is another one part of this. So that can Trump eliminate the education department? Here's what the Constitution says, and it kind of goes through how or why Trump thinks he can make this actually happen. But then you tweeted out Trump is not signing an EU to eliminate the Department of Education today. This is the third time such an announcement has been reported. This time will be no different from the last two. Even if he signs it today, it won't eliminate the Department of ED because doing so requires an act of Congress. Tell us how are you sure that this is something he's not going to be able to do, and how will he be able to justify the fact that he can't get it done when he's telling us he wants to do this?
Yeah, well, so if you look at those screenshots, you can look at the dates in there. I remembered the dates on which it was reported previously. So the first time was while I was finishing up the article that I wrote for Unlimited Hangout regarding his attempts to do this. And Whitney had mentioned, sent me something where they said, oh, they're announcing an executive order to abolish the Department of Education. And I looked at it. And if you read it, even if you looked at sort of the bottom of those screenshots, even in the reports on it, they say, well, technically it would require an act of Congress to get rid of it altogether. And then the second time they announced it was, I think, March 6th. So one was early February, and the next one was March 6th. Now we're doing it again today. The last two times they did it, it didn't come about. So I was wondering if this was going to be another Epstein Files release day. But it looks like, I think he's talking about it as we speak currently. But if you read the fine print on all of that, right, what the executive order is slated to do is direct the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, to shut down as many offices and programs as is permissible under applicable law, right? That's not eliminating the Department of Education, right? It might be cutting it back a whole bunch, but it's not eliminating it. Now, if he does write an executive order that says the Department of Education is abolished, well, I mean, there'll be lawsuits immediately. It'll be challenged in court, and then if he disregards that entirely, well, then he is officially a dictator, right? So, if he's gonna play within the rules of law at all, he's gonna have to, in order to get rid of the whole thing, that's gonna take an act of Congress. So we'll see exactly what is announced today.
Okay, and I want people to understand more about this because I know that you had written an article about this. You point out about the Project 2025 thing, and this is something that obviously a lot of people, a lot of Kamala supporters, a lot of the Vote Blue No Matter Who group, who we challenge a whole lot on this show. They talked a lot about this Project 2025 being a legitimate threat to our Constitution, to our democracy, as they put it. But it seems like, according to your article, and let me throw this up here. So Trump ED 2025, school choice corporatization, social impact finance, and the dismantling of the Department of Education. So this is, you're saying, in alignment with Project 2025, Trump pledges to eliminate the Department of Education and replace it with school choice rather than end federal control of education. And so Project 2025's education policy threatens to expand both government and corporate control. So this is going to hurt. But so whatever side of the issue you're on, you're going to be hurt, and this is going to screw both sides of it, whether you for more government, more corporate, less. It sounds like they both are going to get screwed. What is actually happening here, and how is both sides getting screwed on this? I guess is what I'm getting from this.
Yeah, so let me see if I can cover the waterfront there. So a lot of people, as you know, suggested all last year that Project 2025 was a leftist talking point, to which I like to respond. Well, that sounds kind of like a right-wing deflection point, because close to 30 people who were contributors to Project 2025 were in his previous administration. There's several more members that are in his current administration. And if you look at what's in Project 2025, that's in alignment with what he announced in Agenda 47, and it's in alignment with everything that he's announced so far. It's in alignment with what Linda McMahon has discussed in her confirmation hearing. And so basically, there's two pillars to it, and one of those pillars, I guess, has an A and a B. And so the two pillars are, one is to quote unquote dismantle or the Department of Education. We can talk about what that really entails. But the other pillar is what's called school choice. Now, this is a euphemistic umbrella term that includes charter schools, which are private companies subsidized by public tax dollars, and then a bunch of other financial mechanisms that funnel public tax dollars into private schools, could be religious schools, but also ed tech companies. So this is the way that that we're going to be expanding the corporatization, right? Because we're going to be subsidizing private companies, whether charter school companies or ed tech companies, through what are known as education savings accounts. But along with that comes, if the private school takes the education savings account, or if you're at a homeschool, right? If you left the public school system during lockdowns because you didn't want mandates and you were
Right.
upset with a lot of the critical theory and gender ideology stuff, there's going to come federal regulations, strings attached to those education savings accounts. So you're actually going to expand the government's regulatory control of private schools and homeschools. And so if you look at just one sample of a state law that the federal ESAs in Project 2025, upon which they are based, it's stipulated there that if you take this money, one of the things that you have to do is comply with health codes, right? So if we get to another lockdown scenario and you think you're safe in your homeschool, but you're taking your education savings account money, you are going to be perhaps required to take one of those experimental therapies. In the meantime, that money that you're going to use is most likely going to go to pay for ed tech products. So you're going to have big tech companies data mining your children as well.
Wow. So this is all the fears of heading to this direction where the people that have, like you said, get caught out of the system. They said during COVID, we don't want to be part of this, and it's going to open up these opportunities. It looks on the surface like they're going to have these opportunities to have besides the public school system, but it sounds like they're all going to get screwed here because the corporate formula of and I guess this is kind of it's a right wing kind of philosophy of opening up, get less government, getting more corporations having this power, deregulating their power, and they're able to do this. It kind of leaves them out in the cold with all this. It sounds like what they're going to be doing here, and then the Elon Musk style, I guess, bringing in this new wave of technology, kind of setting the tone for everybody here. But you're saying at the same time that Trump's not actually going to be able to get this done. This is just the theory or the thing on the paper that he's trying to do. So what do you think the next thing that's going to happen here as he's trying to get this done? As long as he doesn't, as you said, he doesn't break the standard where he's supposed to go to Congress and do this. What do you think is going to happen next? Is my question.
Well, so the school choice stuff can happen separately from the dismantling, quote unquote, of the Department of Education, right? So whether or not he can actually
Right.
get to the degree to which he can actually curtail or get rid of the Department of Education will not have any bearing on whether or not they can pass school choice legislation. So one of the bills in Project 2025 is the Educating Children for Choice Act, the ECCA, and this wants to put basically subsidize what are known as scholarship granting organizations or nonprofit companies that give out similar types of public fund, or they're not technically not public after it goes to the SGO. That's sort of the loophole that they're using, but right, they're subsidizing similar type. They're not ESAs, but it's a similar mechanism. And then on the other end, they want to use Title I funds to funnel those through the education savings accounts. As far as the Department of Education goes, they actually have, there's at least 3 bills that have been put forward or drafted at least, positing different ways to sunset the Department of Education. So, and in Project 2025, there is stipulations for, they call it the Department of Education Reorganization Act, right? And so even if they're able to get such a bill passed, and that would require 60 votes in the Senate. So, the degree to which they can do that might be why they're going to try to get as much done by executive order as possible. Maybe they didn't get the big red wave that they wanted to get those bills passed. But there's 3 bills. They have different stipulations, but most of them, the stipulations are in line with Project 2025, and that is that if they get rid of the Department of Education, okay, all that does is get rid of the bureaucracy. All it does is get rid of the bureaucracy that oversees the federal entitlements. It doesn't get rid of federal education entirely, okay? Because all it really does is oversee and administer the entitlement fundings. Now, they can do a little bit with like discretionary block grants, and they can influence the adoption of pedagogy and methodology through like research and development at the regional education labs, through the Institute of Education Sciences and stuff like that. But the bulk of what they do is oversee the federal entitlements. So if he doesn't also repeal the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the Higher Education Act, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the Every Student Succeeds Act, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, okay, all those entitlements go to other departments or other agencies. And so if you look at what's in Project 2025, it says the bulk of them will go to Health and Human Services, HHS.
Yep.
Second in line will be Department of Labor. And then others would involve Department of Justice, Department of Commerce, Department of State, and the Treasury as well. If you listened to McMahon's confirmation hearing, when they asked her, is she going to get rid of the federal entitlements? And she says, no, we just want to fund them more efficiently. And when they ask her, what would you do with IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act? How would you facilitate those entitlements? She goes, well, I don't know if it wouldn't be better served at HHS, which is totally in line with Project 2025. When they asked her how she would enforce Title IX, which is what stipulates or supposed to prevent gender discrimination at schools, she says, I don't know if they say, if you get rid of the Office for Civil Rights, where will you how will you enforce it? She says, I don't know if it wouldn't be better served at the Department of Justice. Again, entirely in line with Project 2025. And for those that think that perhaps they could push forward education savings accounts and not have the federal strings attached, when Senator Blunt Rochester asked her whether private schools accepting ESAs would be required to enroll students with disabilities, she basically danced around it and filibustered, and Blunt Rochester says it's a yes or no answer, and she says, well, I don't think it is. And so then she says, well, I don't have time for that, so you can put that answer in writing. We need to go on to the next question. But I mean, her unwillingness to give her yes or no answer suggests, again, that right, all of this is moving in this direction. So I would say that they will gut as much or restructure as much of the Department of Education as they can do by executive order. They will have a very difficult time actually passing such a Department of Education Reorganization Act. In such an instance, again, it's not going to get rid of federal education. It's just going to restructure it. But the school choice prongs are separate issues, and there's probably more support for those. But those would be entirely legislative. I'm not sure of what can be done by executive order as far as converting Title I funds to education savings accounts. For those, if you want to know what Title I is for, those are monies that are allocated for schools that are that fall below a certain economic bracket, right? So essentially, right, impoverished schools. So they want to take some of that money and give it to parents, so to speak. I'm not sure that you can do that without a law. So
Mm.
that's sort of what's on the menu, right?
Okay. So you were talking about the confirmation hearings, Linda McMahon kind of deflecting where all this is going to go and mentioning these other the HHS is going to take it over and all this and so I'm I'm wondering because I haven't seen anything from RFK Jr. on this at all. Is this something? Do you think he's been in conversations about this? He doesn't mention this at all, and I find it bizarre that it's the first agency mentioned as far as who's going to take over these responsibilities is his agency that he's in charge of. I haven't heard him mention this. What do you think's going on as far as his involvement in this currently?
Well, I'll tell you that I know that he's a school choice proponent. Okay, I know that he's said that he promotes school choice. Now, how much has he been in discussion with McMahon or Trump regarding this? Well, he did sign some executive orders regarding education already. One of which does authorize the Department of Education and also the Department of Health and Human Services to issue discretionary block grants for some school choice purposes. If you look in the article, it's referenced and cited there. But it's he's wanting because there's certain early childhood development grants that kind of dovetail or overlap with education. Same thing like when I mentioned the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. It's actually more of a Department of Labor thing, but they enter into public-private partnerships with the Department of Education through the Office of Adult Career and Technical Education to facilitate what they call career pathways curriculums, right? And so for early childhood development, right, we can consider that sort of like in the realm of developmental health, right? And so that in that way, that HHS, those grants overlap with education. So some of that could be used maybe for like Head Start programs or something like that. And right, or other, if they made a school choice grant out of it, right, it would be they would make it as open-ended as possible where that money could be either given to the states to allocate how the parents get it or just give it directly to parents, and then they might go to whatever Head Start programs or some sort of some sort of other type of what they might call a wraparound service at a community school, something like that. So how much have they discussed? I can't say. I don't know that. But I would imagine because it says within 90 days of this executive order, the Secretary of Education, the Secretary of HHS will come up with a plan for how to do these things. Now, do they have to coordinate to do that, or can they just can they stipulate their own stuff? I don't know. So I mean, to the extent that they would have to coordinate, I would guess they've probably talked a little bit, right? But I mean, you also know, this might be worth noting, like you said, like, is it just the fact that it's HHS that's kind of strange to you, or is it that Bobby hasn't said anything in particular that's strange to you?
Well, it gets me thinking either one of two things. One is he doesn't have we have this issue on the other stuff he's supposed to be doing that he doesn't actually have any power at all. And they're just using the department. They're just throwing it out there and he's not actually part of this at all. Or two, it makes me think maybe that they know this isn't going to happen at all. Therefore, that's why he's not talking about it. He's talking about other things. I just looked this. This is interesting. He's pushing to get the cell phones out of schools. So that's his one issue on schools right now. I guess that's a big. He's saying there's electric magnetic radiation issues with the cell phones, which is hurting the it's causing neurological damage to the kids. So I'm seeing that coming up right now when I'm looking at how RFK Jr. is talking about this. What he's doing, what the HSS is doing for the school system. So those are the thoughts I have. Is either one, he's not part of this because it's not going to happen, or he's not part of it because he doesn't actually have any power in the HSS at all, even to begin with. And the whole thing is just theater.
Okay. Well, I mean, that may be the case. But, to a certain extent, the secretary, in my, for those who don't know, my book, School World Order, the foreword was written by Charlotte Thompson Iserbyt. and she worked in the Department of Education under Ronald Reagan, and she blew the whistle on something called Project BEST, Basic Education Skills Through Technology, and it basically laid the groundwork for setting up all the public-private ed tech partnerships for the fourth industrial revolution. And the way, you know, I spent a long time with her. When she passed away, she gave me her entire library. About 90% of what you see is hers, okay, and gave me all her files. But we had a lot of conversations. I lived with her for a whole month at one point, so I have gave me a lot of anecdotal stories about how the department works, how it operates, right? And the secretary, in a lot of ways, doesn't really do a lot, or at least not as much. Like, most of the labor is done by the assistants and the deputies, right? And so, I mean, in the same way that the president can't really oversee all the different departments, the secretary can't oversee all the offices in the department, right? So more or less what they do is they get directives from the president. They might, you know, have some autocephalous, you know, control of some discretionary stuff they want to do, but they pretty much like dole out, you know, this workforce development project for this office, this ed tech project for this office, a school choice privatization project for this office. They have the assistants and the deputies go and do their thing. And then the staffers like Charlotte, you know, the senior advisors, et cetera, they actually like try to implement that, get the data. They report back to the assistant reports back to the secretary, who basically goes, okay, more of this, less of that, and then tells the president. I mean, so, you know, the amount that we could expect, for any secretary, you know, don't get too excited, I guess, is what I would say. Yeah,
Definitely. Well, I appreciate you're looking into this, and, you know, from I'm going to say a non, you know, basically, not to say middle ground, but you're non-tribal about this. You're not on either side here, so you're showing both sides of this and saying that there was some validity here to the Project 2025 agenda, as well as the Agenda 47 policy platform. So moving forward, if he does get this to happen, what type of school system are we going to be stuck with when you've got corporations and government kind of both getting the best of what they want, and it's kind of turning on the people, and it doesn't look like that that anyone's going to be in a good situation if this actually does happen. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, a good analogy I kind of came up with recently when I was went to the gas station to get an energy drink and getting ready for a workout, and one of the vendors was there and offers to buy me one of the energy drinks for the company that he works for that I drink, and proceeds to tell me about how Monster owns basically all of the or a large portion of the shares of all of the products in there. Right. And then a big chunk of Monster is owned by Pepsi. Right. So basically, you can think of the new school system, right? Especially if they get all the school choice stuff pushed through, it'll basically be, right, you'll have all these different choices or selections, right? All these different products, but all of them sort of owned by GovCorp. So you'll have your public school, you'll have your public-private charter school, you'll have your private school like your Groton, your Dalton, you'll have your parochial schools like your religious schools, you'll have your home schools, you'll have your micro schools, right? But all of them will be under the purview of GovCorp, right? It will be government regulated. It'll be one system. So, you know, you might go and open up the refrigerator and look at all these different, right, energy drinks. Look at all these different schools I can choose from. But you can't choose. The menu is given to you. You don't get to choose the choices. And I'll tell you something else that this will illustrate. If people think that I'm sort of being doom and gloom here. Friend of mine in Tennessee, Tiffany Boyd, had a bill drafted to create a separate category of homeschool that would not receive ESAs. So this bill was not going to stop the Tennessee legislature from getting their ESA bill. I don't remember if it was an ESA or a voucher. It doesn't matter. They're all basically the same with different slight nuances. It's going to put public dollars into private schools and homeschools. And they just wanted to create a category that would stay safe from that. Right. So basically, you can have that. You can go ahead and have your ESAs and you can regulate those homeschools. We want ours. They said no. Their argument, and you can go on my X page, my Twitter page, and you can see a clip from the hearing where they said that, well, some parents abuse their kids, so we got to make sure that we can regulate. And right. So is it about first of all, is it about homeschooling? Like, is it? I thought it was parental choice. I thought the parents made the best decisions, right? Like, the only reason why they should have a problem with that is that they don't get to have a piece of that pie. They don't get to control those schools, which tells you what the real agenda is. And I'll tell you one other thing, which is interesting. In Illinois, where I live, right, currently there is a bill. There are no school choice provisions in the bill. We already have vouchers in Illinois, okay? But currently, right now, while all the red states are pushing for these school choice bills that will expand these vouchers and ESAs and tax credits that will expand government control of private schools and homeschools, you have a bill in Illinois that push all the school choice stuff away. So we're not giving you any money, but we are going to regulate homeschools, and you have to have them registered. So you see across the board, left and right, a push to bring all forms of education under the purview of GovCorp in some form or another, from the left and the right, with different angles. I mean, that should, if you think that I'm blackpilling people about, the school choice revolution, just think about that and chew on that for a minute. That should let you know what the real goal is.
Yeah, no, this is you're talking about. It's the illusion of choice, right? This is the monster analogy in the open the refrigerator. It's the illusion of choice, but it's all coming from the same place. And so we're just pretending that we have a choice here. It's just very similar. It kind of reminds me of I think an old bit that George Carlin did about, we figured out how to do 31 flavors of ice cream, but we don't have any choices of who to be voting for. Like, it's like they tell you this is your choice. And so people are already conditioned for this. They already are ready to be told, here's your choice. And then they think they're making this choice, but it's not. It's all coming from the same place. So this is not, yeah, it's a little doom and gloom. I appreciate you being direct and open about this, because we have to understand what we're actually in the middle of here. At the same time, you are saying, hey, maybe some people on the left had this right about the Project 2025. This part of it seems like that's what is happening. So what can people do, or what are you working on to get this message out, or do something proactive about this? What can we do?
Well, I was happy to hear that that my article made its way before the eyes of a couple state legislators, and one in particular that was helping with that bill in Tennessee. So I mean, it's personally, right? I mean, this right here, writing, doing, trying to get the information out as much as possible is what is the best I can do personally. But if people are wondering, what are the options, I've sort of, in my book, I kind of have a 5-point program for reforming public schools. And since lockdowns, I've sort of been offering some strategies for how to create parallel structures, getting out of public schools, creating the homeschool co-ops and pods, but emphasizing, like, don't take the education savings account money, don't take the voucher money, don't take the tax credit money. What it's going to do is you're going to lose the autonomy that you're trying to achieve, and that you're basically, it's self-defeating, right? And those two things I want to emphasize are not mutually exclusive, right? So you can, like, schools get money for attendance and have the seats and the people in the seats, just having the students in the chairs. So if you do take your son or daughter out of a public school and you do create a homeschool co-op or a pod, you have every right to still go and voice your opinion at the local school boards and still have them reform, because you're still paying tax dollars. And I really feel like we do have to do both at the same time. And so, if there was a way to make a coalition between, sort of, on the right, the homeschoolers, and people on the left that see all the corporatization part. That's part of why I wrote the article the way I did. Right? I mean, I came at it from both angles, right? I mean, traditionally people on the left, understand that, corporatization bad. Traditionally people on the right, big government bad. Well, I'm sure those things are happening. If there's a way that, if we bring these people together somehow, and at least just like for the time being, to reform this on this issue, but those are the strategies, right? Those are the strategies.
No, I like that. That's great. So you outline this 5-point plan. What's the best? So, and it's in your book. I want to make sure people can get the book for sure. What's the best way they can do that?
So if you go to the website, my website is schoolworldorder.info. I have links to the book right there on the home page. But Trying Day Books is the publisher. Obviously, well, not obviously, but it is on Amazon. So you can get it there if you have to. Obviously, better to go to the publisher, but if you bid it from Amazon, I at least get some indication of how it's selling. So
Yeah, you said so. Schoolworldorder.info. Is that
yes, sir.
okay? I'm gonna throw that up for people. And you're discussing basically this plan where you kind of doing both sides at the same time. You can take your kid out of the school. You still have a voice because of like you're saying. Uh, uh, you're still having a piece of the pie because your student, your son or daughter counts as the money coming in, so therefore you can have a voice and you're not out of the system completely. So that's a good. Can you sum up any of the other points briefly before you go, so we know what else we can start having these conversations with people as well, because like we need to be talking about this like right now.
Well, so I mean, as far as the 5-point program, the first one was local control, public control. So that also meant a lot of people were like, so are you supporting the Department of Education? I said, actually, I'm not. Right. I mean, my mentor, Charlotte, was an advocate of getting rid of it. Actually, that was what Ronald Reagan ran on when he went in there.
Right. Yeah.
And never happened. Right. So, local control, public control means, right, not federal control, means not corporate control, right? And so that means, right, reforming the local school boards in accordance, right, and making sure that, right, you're not entering into school choice grant programs or other public-private partnerships with wraparound services, etc. So local control, public control. The others had to do more with like pedagogy and methodology. So it was like there was a big emphasis on the way that schools emphasize what they call the behavioral method. So it's an emphasis more on psychology than like classical learning, right? In the grammar, logic, rhetoric sense of the word. Another was to basically get rid of the data mining, right? So in large, it meant to, I always try to say be as low tech or no tech as possible. Personally, I understand that's not, a reality for most people, and there could be some uses for like people with disabilities. So this would mean that, right, making sure that ed tech products don't data mine things like psychometrics and biometrics, right? Like very minimal data collection, only insofar as the device is functional, and to the extent that even that might collect data, we could have something like a right to be forgotten, right? Something like what I think they have them in the GDPR laws in Europe. So some sort of some way to curtail or ban, right? Certainly certain categories of data mining, but across the board as much as possible. And then I emphasize, therefore, returning to classical method. It means grammar, logic, rhetoric, and an emphasis on metaphysics in terms of having a discussion about sort of objective truth as opposed to like postmodern relativism, because a lot of the pedagogy is sort of the pedagogy revolves around postmodern relativism. The methodology revolves around behaviorist determinism. And so you get this weird mix of like, determinism and relativism. And so what you kind of need for that is, right, some discussion of metaphysics and philosophy. And all that means is causes. Okay. It doesn't necessarily mean like woo-woo stuff, but right, we have to have a discussion about, right, a priori values, right? We have to, people like to think that education can be value neutral, but it in some ways it's not really possible, right? So we have to have certain types of values that we can come to terms with, and I think the best way to do that is to start with a sort of a discussion about the history of philosophy, mythopoetics, and like what that tells us about sort of what common values would guide us away from behavioral determinism and postmodern relativism. I know that's probably a mouthful.
No, that's a lot. I appreciate your thoughtful investigation on this, and I'll just say to people that are learning about this for the first time, or I assume, I think people in general know that there's something inherently wrong with our education system. And again, whatever side you're on, as far as you want, more, less government to fix it, or you want less corporatism to fix it. The point is, I think we can all agree there is something wrong with our education system, and we have to be a little more thoughtful about what our kids are learning, how they're learning throughout the day, and who's supporting this, who's funding this, and do we want our generations to be smarter? Do we want them to be more equipped to deal with this crazy world? Maybe there's people that don't want that. Maybe that's part of the problem. You have people that want to keep people uneducated, not thinking with their critical thinking skills, and maybe that is inherently a problem with our system. But you doing this work is so important, and people having this discussion and knowing that we are all on the same side here, trying to fix something. And we're all going to get screwed if we don't get proactive. So I appreciate all the work you're doing on all this. I'm telling people to go and grab your book, schoolworldorder.info, and get part of the solution here. Is there anything else you want to leave us before we say bye here?
No, I appreciate you having me on. I really do. So thanks a bunch, man.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John KLYCZEK, the Taoist professor himself. Thank you so much. School World Order, guys, go pick it up and stay informed. And let's be better together. Thanks so much. We'll have you back on soon.
Thanks, buddy.
I appreciate the time. Thank you.